Hey, family.
Good morning.
Happy Saturday.
Saturday. What's
Now you
up,
doing a good
family?
morning.
I know. I did a good morning. Happy Saturday. We are so excited to be gathering with you on today. You all know how we do it. You all say hello.
Come on in.
Come on in,
Yeah.
Greet each other, give those virtual greetings. If this is your first time gathering with us in this TLC live virtual space, just let us know. All you got to do is just type first time.
First time. And our greeters are here. They're waiting. Our entire community is waiting to welcome you. So we're so glad that you're here today. It feels like it's been a while, but we are glad and just so privileged and honored and blessed to be with you all this morning. And today is a special day. Man, we are so excited, so blessed to be celebrating our 16th wedding anniversary. 16 sweet years. So sweet 16.
It's sweet 16 on today. So we have to change it up a little bit.
Yeah.
And get a little
more cozy,
a little bit more cozy and comfortable here.
I've had the privilege of being married to this beauty for 16 years.
Yeah.
And I'll say they were sweet years. Yeah.
They were. And so we're just excited. What better way to celebrate and to this momentous anniversary for us than to be with our community, with our friends, with our family, and even with our guests. If this is your first time, you're here, you're logged in, and so you're part of the community. And so thank you for being here with us today. So because of that, because we are celebrating and really thinking about, we spent and have been spending actually time reflecting
as we always
do.
And really, this is like the season for us. I mean, every year it's just like tons of celebrations, anniversaries, birthdays. Just celebrated my birthday because I was smart enough to get married 3 days after my birthday, and so I'll never forget it, right? So, but yeah, what we wanted to do today, because it's our anniversary, is just to really spend some time reflecting. And so today we wanted to reflect with 10 keys for relational prosperity. So 10 keys for relational prosperity. 3 John 3:2 says, "Beloved, I wish above all that thou mayest prosper and be in good health, even as thy soul prospers." And one of the things that we talk about in terms of our community is this desire that we're prospering in every area of our lives.
That's right.
And we just believe that a big part of that has to do with our relationships, because that's like the very base of things. And so we felt led to just really, as we think about these 16 years, to just begin just sharing with you all, just conversationally, reflecting on things that we've sort of learned over 16 years. And these are things that, we've learned them in the context of our marriage. But let me just say this right up front. There's, as you're going to hear, there's some things that just really, they all really apply across the board to any relationship.
That's right.
And so we hope that you all can glean from this. We're just honored that God has just blessed us to be able to prosper. I mean, relationally with each other, in our careers. God has just blessed us through that. But a lot of it is some of the lessons that we've learned at home and taking them into work, and or things that we might have learned at work and applied into the marriage and things like that. So that's so true. We are thinking about this, and in this time of reflecting over our marriage. But one of the things that we do know is that what we want to share with you can be taken, and we want you to grab hold to it and take what you can and apply it to any particular relationship, whether that is
a friendship, whether that is working on a reconciliation with a family member, with your spouse, with your children, for those of us. And so we're really excited. So we're gonna just share and converse and talk and reflect. And we're inviting you in that. And so, as Terrence has shared, we're reflecting on our 10 keys for relational prosperity. And these are not in any way in a particular order of importance or value, but things that we really have, that we know have been essential for us. And so let's kick it off. So that first one. Let's go. So the first one, really key, no matter where you are, no matter how old you are, how young, or whatever the case may be. It's receive God's love. Receive God's love. First and foremost, I mean, as I reflect just even over some of the even more challenging times in our relationship, if I'm honest with myself, there were moments and there were areas in my life, I'll just say this for me personally, where I had yet to receive God's love. And in that place of being able to receive God's love for yourself, it's ultimately a place of at times extending grace to yourself. Because when you can't extend that grace to yourself, you're honestly not in a position. We're honestly not in a position, Keisha, to extend it to others. That's right.
Right. And we were just having a conversation just this week about, and I appreciate just you being in my life and sharing things about patience, and being and kindness and things like that. We just remember that, just had that conversation about that and how it's important. But what I realize, and I have to continuously remind myself, is that, man, have I received the love of God for myself in this particular area? Because if I haven't, man, I can't give it.
That's right. We oftentimes say you can't give what you don't have to give. And so it takes me to 1 John 4:7. It says, "Beloved, let us love one another, for love is from God, and whoever loves has been born of God and knows God. Anyone who does not love does not know God." Why? Because God is love. And it says, "In this, the love of God has made manifest among us, that God sent his only Son into the world so that we might live through him. In this is love, not that we have loved God, but that he loved us and sent his Son to be the propitiation. What's the word?
The propitiation.
Thank you. There you go. For our sins. Beloved, if God so loved us, we also ought to love one another." Right. And so it's this idea of us receiving that love from God and receiving all that God is love, right? And so in that, we've oftentimes gone back, and that has pushed us back in those difficult moments, right? To go back to the source.
Go back to the source. That's a good one. I remember, like, even in our wedding, I remember that song choice, and it still reminds me to this day that, and they'll know that we are Christians by our love. And I remember the duet that was singing that, and that was just a beautiful reminder of just that, right? And so when we've received God's love, sometimes that's how we know that we're capable of loving in those particular areas and things too. So that's
so good, because then later on, if you drop down to 16, it says, "God is love, and whoever abides in love abides in God, and God abides in him." Right. And it says, "By this is love perfected with us."
That's right.
And so that's just, once again, it's just so important for us to recognize. And I think for, in our relationship, it's caused us to kind of go back and push ourselves back, right, to
that's
receiving that.
Absolutely. And I think that's actually a pretty good transition point, really, to number 2, because you talked about perfecting. Right. So we all know that particularly if we're on a Christian journey, it's on a journey of being shaped and formed in the image and the likeness of God. Right. And so our second key,
Yes.
if you will, is basically work on you.
That's it.
Work on you.
Work on you.
Work on you.
Yeah.
I can't tell you
My
how
goodness.
tempting it was, especially early on, to point the finger. Like,
yeah, it still is sometimes.
Yeah. But I mean, particularly then, before I just get revelation, I mean, it was, and it still is, and just everyday life, even outside of marriage at times, if something's going wrong at work, it's easier. It feels better. It feels more comfortable to be like, it's your fault, or you did it, and so, so work on you. Work on you. I think that's just so important.
Can somebody say, Lord, I'm going to work on me? Okay. Can we say, I'm going to work on me, right? With your help. That's the thing. Like, with your help, with your guidance, with your love. And that's, and those 2 points go back to thinking about relational prosperity. And it's so important because oftentimes we think about, and I appreciate you saying that, like, what this other person needs to do.
Right.
And it's like, no, pause.
And I mean, we often even tell our girls, look, the only person, because they're at that age where they can get at each other. I mean, if you got siblings, we all get to those points, right? And it's just like, they're like cats and dogs at times, and then it feels like, but they're aggravating me. They're doing this and they're getting on my nerves. They're and we're like, look, the only person that you can control is you. That's the bottom line. You can't control like the outcomes outside of yourself, but you can always control you. And so that's one of the things I would say that we learned is that really work on you. There were areas where I said I have to work on myself. I might have looked at my child, my upbringing, or I might have looked at my historic makeup and different things that were going on, and the process of even working on me, it was a process of discovering me. You know what I'm saying? And the more I was able to discover me, the better I was able to navigate me and you.
Oh my gosh.
And so that is so, I can't say this enough. Work on you is so key. Because you're enabled, just that.
And what you just said, Terrence, it takes us right into this next one, which is number 3, know the history. And I think that's so important because as you begin to work on you, and as I began to work on me, and particularly a pivotal moment for me, I think, in our relationship was the passing of my father. And when my father passed, going through that grieving process of what I now felt like I did not have anymore in this earthly relationship. And what was it, right? And so I was frustrated. I was angry about that. I was grieving. And I think part of that, it caused me to walk back and understand and unpack, well, what was it that my father provided? And giving language and context to that, and then opening myself up to say, what was it in that protection? What was it in that comfort? What was it in that, covering? And to be honest, that I was still relying on from my father when God had provided that for me and my husband. And so the frustration that I was receiving at times earlier on, and you all know the stories that he heard all the time, and he shared that what my daddy did, and you not doing it like my daddy, and there was even moments that I felt of my heart and of my emotions that I had not fully released to Terrence because I was relying on getting that from my father. And so unpacking that and really going through the process, and even in that, coming back to him in moments and having to apologize. I'm grieving, but having to apologize and say, man, I realized that there were things that I still was not fully open and released to you because I was actually going to my father to get that. And so I think this idea of know the history. And really when you talked about you doing the work and doing the historic kind of walking back. That was so important because what you also did was then you started to share that with me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think know the history. I like the way it's worded. Know the history. Because really it applies to both aspects. So know the history. Know, first of all, knowing your own history. When you do the work, just as she was able to articulate, like, man, this is some of the things that I was going through and how I process things with my dad. But then it's also so knowing that for yourself, right? Because when you can, again, that ties perfectly into working on you. Because when you can know the history of yourself, then you can understand, okay, man, this is something that I have to work on. You can allow that to be disclosed to God and Holy Spirit to say, okay, I've got to work on this. And how I relate, horizontally. And then, with that, the next piece of know the history is really knowing the history of those that you were in relationship with. Right. So which takes us really into our next key, which is one. It was a big one for us, especially for me. I wanted that from her. But it's empathetic listening. So listening with empathy. Because now, as you get to know the history, and when you listen with empathy, it's really this place of listening for understanding. Y'all know us, and y'all know Keisha would, formulate her responses before I can get it out of my mouth. I mean, I'm just, I'm like da 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 da, and I might as well have been like Charlie Brown, like wah, and she was ready, firing back, didn't even hear anything that I had to say. And so I think I was able to teach you in that space a bit, and at times I've been able to learn more to do that better for you as well. But that's so important. And I think about, particularly in marriages, let's think about this for a moment. In relationships, period. Think about some of the best relationships that you've had, right? And even if it's not just one relationship, think about some of the best relational moments that you've had. All right, everybody just take a moment, think about that. Maybe it was a conversation, ladies, with your best girlfriend. Fellas, it was just a bonding moment, with another brother, or maybe it was with your sibling. Maybe it was a conversation that you had with a parent or someone close. But the best relational moments, what I'm getting at, is you come away feeling heard, right? And those moments that you just enjoy, there's a sense of mutuality that happens, which really also perfectly ties also into the next point here, which is to add value. And so one of the things my mentor would teach me is that, share the talking stick, have it to be give and take in relationships. And so going back, if we're listening with empathy, it's also creating that space where I'm listening to understand, I'm listening to tie into history together, because I also want to add value. And part of that adding value, the way that we add value sometimes, is providing a sounding board. It's providing that space, right? For people to be heard. And then part of it is when we get to be heard. Everyone wants and desires to be heard. Period.
That's so good. And one of and I think, and I was looking for this particular quote about one of the young ladies, that one of the doctors that I follow is Dr. Carol Leaf, who just shares a lot of tips on just Caroline Leaf, who shares a lot of just really great tips and thoughts about relationships, about mental, emotional health, and all of that. But one of the things that she oftentimes talk about is this idea about being givers and being takers, and that sometimes for those of us that are givers, we have to just be very mindful of that reciprocity in that, and allowing ourselves also to receive. And I say that that's so important when I think about this idea of adding value, that and going back to relationships. Relationships should have this reciprocity where there's a constant exchange, right? And I think about moments, and you talk about the relationships that we're in and those that you think about. It's those relationships where you do feel a sense of value that's been added to that individual, but also value that's been received. And it's nothing, it's just this constant, and knowing that there are going to be seasons, right? There's seasons, and relationships go through seasons. We're so encouraged, because I think that there were times when, we talk about some of your hardest moments when you were going through making some adjustments at work, and the going through a new team, and it was like some of those moments that were very hard. And then on the flip side, those were moments when I felt like I had the capacity to continue to encourage, to be and a motivator and an inspiration. And then it switched. And then now all of a sudden last year, I'm in a place where I'm super, super just like open and vulnerable. I have this new team. There's a lack of, there's just, I'm going through some insecurities, and you were able, to provide and to encourage. And so again, it's like thinking about our relationships and thinking about what ways are you adding value?
How are you adding value to one another?
Yes.
And just really sharing in that space, and being willing to do it, and understanding. I like how you said, the different seasons too, because sometimes it's important to be able to, in that process, to be able to extend each other grace. And then you want to take inventory sometimes. One of the things that really stood out for me, and I think I might have shared this with you, is there was one of my classes on spiritual formation and different spiritual practices and things like that. And I'd never thought about this, but they had you go through the list of your relationships and list the people down, line upon line. And assess the value that was being added, and the value that you were adding to kind of, it was just sort of an exercise to really allow us to think about the relationships that were in our lives, and I had never thought about it in that regard. And then from that, the next leg of the assignment was then to set some goals around it. So like, it might be like my parents might have been in there, and it might have been thinking about the amount of time that I want to spend with them, that I want to be able to give to them, and different people like my mentor, and setting goals about how often I needed to spend. But it also just really pushed you to think about, man, what am I giving? Going back to working on you, what am I giving? What am I offering in this relationship? Is it a positive relationship? Is it geared towards being mutually beneficial, or me helping someone as well as them helping me and pouring life? It really just, I don't know, it just really pushed me to think about that in a way that I had never done that before, and set some goals around it too. So that's so good. And I was reflecting on, you were sharing earlier about the conversation. Like, I went out with some friends, and just, I was sharing with you just how life-giving it is to leave those gatherings and those time of fellowship, and you feel like, you're inspired, you've laughed, but then you also, it's something that has been said that you felt like, man, that I want to really meditate and think about that and chew on that. And I want to go back to the scripture and read on that. We were talking about really resonated.
That really resonated with me, this idea of patience and kindness, and then be able to take that, and then in another conversation with you, bring that back up. Like that, those are just so important in terms of those life-giving moments in which that value has been added, which goes back to, in order to add value, having, one of the key 6 is this intentional time investment. Right.
That's the next one. Intentional time investment. That, so in anything, my dad used to say it like this. He said, you got to water your flowers, son. He would say this when I got married. That was his advice. Water your flowers,
Yeah.
and what he was saying is that you have to be intentional in your investment.
Yes.
And particularly in our investment of time. Even when I
Yes.
go back to that assessment, it caused me to think about, okay, how do I want to spend time, and how do I want to set goals, and what do I want us to accomplish? But in order to do that, we have to be intentional.
You do.
And about how, in terms of how we're going to go about doing things. When are we going to spend time together?
Yeah.
What might we do? And it doesn't mean like you have to just plan everything all the way out, because I can be that planner, but it means that you're just intentional about the time.
Yeah.
Sometimes we just like to do nothing. I mean, honestly, if we can have the space where we don't have to go anywhere, be anywhere, or run, or do this or that, or fulfill this obligation, we just like to be.
Yeah.
Now, sometimes she'll fall asleep, but it is what it is.
But no, it's so important. That's why, I really, one of the things that I was reflecting on is that, during the summer, we see so many posts of these special outings and vacations. And, it's so, I mean, for me, I smile, I appreciate, people sharing and giving glimpse into quality time and memories that are made. But I think that we also have to just not wait for the season of summer.
Right. There you go.
There has to be this investment of time and thought that is done year round. It's almost kind of like we think about the maintenance on the cars, and oftentimes, if we stay ahead of schedule and do things,
that's good.
We were just talking about that with our home, right?
Yeah.
Like we constantly making sure and attending to and taking care of things before we're totally drained, or before we just only can wait for the
before
summer.
It's just emergency.
Yeah.
And that's what when we're not intentional, we have this tendency to be alarmist. It's like, oh my God, if everything, this is tore up, this is, and we do that. But if we would just be more intentional, we wouldn't have to face the crises moment, or go into crises mode, or wait till things get like that. And I love that home example, because I've been big on that. Like, no, let's get ahead of it.
Because and I remember you're like, and again, this looks different in different seasons. Like I keep going back to that. I remember when we had little ones, and maybe it wasn't as it wasn't easy always to just up and get a sitter, right? And I remember us saying, you know what, we haven't had a candle lit romantic dinner, and I'll never forget that visual. This was when we were still living in Chicago, where we had a candle. I think it was Sweetest Day.
Oh, and it was a heart pizza.
Yes, we got a pizza.
I remember that.
We dimmed the lights. We put some candles on the table. Now the baby was in. You remember, we actually ended up sitting the baby on the corner of the table.
She was there.
She was still in her little cedar. But we wanted to create, and say,
we wanted to create a vibe.
Yes. Right now, that was that season. Now we're like calling Mama Gria, Grandma Poppy. Listen, somebody come get the kids. Okay.
We love y'all.
But but again, it's like just that. We tease about it all the time with our girlfriends, where when we were before married life and children, we would take weeks vacation, girlfriend trips. Like we were laughing about that, and just we buy a plane ticket, we up and we're gone. That looks different now. So maybe it's like, okay, every other month, let's try to schedule tea. During the pandemic, we were intentional when we started having Zoom tea calls, right, with our friends. Again, just really making sure that we continue to make those investments of time in our relationship. So,
and does it align, that intentionality, is it aligned to your goals too, honestly? We'll come back to that a little bit later, but you also have to ask, how is it aligning to your goals? Because even like you said, different seasons and things that you have to do differently with the girlfriends, and it might look different, when you're married and now you're balancing different obligations of,
Yes.
of being a parent or
Yeah.
or being a spouse and,
Yeah.
and all of that. It's a different balance that
It's
has
a
to
different,
happen.
and I think, you know, we talked about just even your investment with the girls, and while
Mm-hmm.
we're, you know, being thoughtful about, you know, spending time with them together, but now as they get older and as you start seeing, you know, different needs and different conversations that arise with your children, like we're even now starting to think and be intentional about having, you know, some quality time with one of the girls, right, at a time, just because there's certain,
because their needs change.
Yes.
And that goes back to
Yeah.
even like we talked about, you know, even listening with empathy, and because all of these things like know the history, listening with empathy, they really come together for us to be continuous learners.
Yes.
So particularly in our marriage,
Yes.
we have to be continuous learners of one another.
Yes.
If we're going to be prosperous in our relationships, you want to be a continuous learner of
Yes.
those that you're in a relationship with, because then you understand more about what their needs are, and we look to the needs of others as well as ourselves.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So good. So key number 7 is reconciliation ready. Reconciliation ready. So really thinking about how are we always so apt and ready to reconcile within the relationship. It kind of goes with those what we talked about a little bit earlier in a series, Courageous Conversations. Yeah. Leaning into opportunities to, you know, when there is some miscommunication, misunderstanding, offense, hurt, quickly recognizing that and being apt to reconcile and you know, those,
I mean, that's really it, is just being ready. You think about the fact that God has given us forgiveness freely.
Yes.
And so being in a position where we can receive it, and give what we've received.
Yes.
You know, and it's God's heart, you know, understanding in this place is God's heart. God's heart is one of reconciliation. He's always desiring to see that happen. And so it's really training ourselves to be apt, you know, to be apt to forgive, to be apt to extend grace, to be apt sometimes to receive grace. So the reconciliation is two ways, because sometimes we're in a place where we can't forgive ourselves. And sometimes we're in that place where we're just continuing to beat up on ourselves, which goes back to this space of really receiving the love of God in a different way. Because again, you can't receive what you haven't, you can't give what you haven't received. And so if you're in that space where you're beating up on yourself, and I've learned this throughout over the years, relationally with Keisha, even with the girls and things like that, I have to continuously check myself to say, wait a minute, because if I'm not in a place to give and extend that grace, it may be because I haven't received it for myself. Yeah. You know, you might be going back to your childhood, like, wait a minute, you know, I didn't get that kind of grace and things like that. But you have to know that God extends it and provides it for us. You know, we got,
as Terrence oftentimes say, we got Bible on it. When we look at Colossians 3, particularly verse 13, it says, be gentle and ready to forgive. Yes. That is so ready to forgive. You know, you think about a state of readiness. It's not, you know, it's almost, I almost think about a sense of anticipation. And it goes on, it says, never hold grudges. It says, remember, the Lord forgave you. Yeah. So you must forgive others.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. I like
the
that.
Lord forgave you. So you must forgive others. But that readiness, you know, goes back to this idea of reconciliation. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. And it goes back to even that song, and they'll know that we're Christians. Yes. By our love. Yeah. And so the way that we demonstrate the love of God that has been extended to us shows the level of maturity. It shows the level of growth, and it shows the level of the willingness to live out the very thing that God has placed us here to live out. You know, because He desires that we would prosper. He desires that we would be in good health. He desires that we would have and enjoy life to the full till it overflows. And so when we're able to live that out in meaningful ways, horizontally, and not just vertically, because it's easy to say we love God whom we do not see according to scripture, but how can we say that and not love those people whom we do see, every day?
And when I think about the reconciliation ready, it really thinking about in the relationships, what part do I play, right? Because sometimes it's receiving the forgiveness, but sometimes it's also asking for the forgiveness.
Yeah.
And
that's a place of humility.
That is just this weekend. I, got a little frustrated. We were, rushing and trying to transitions in our house is a situation. Let me just say that. Anytime it is time to leave or time to, move from, one activity to the next, or it's just tense. It's just tense. And
did you ask for forgiveness?
I did. Yes, because I got so frustrated. And before I knew it, I was, just the tone.
It was about to go down.
The tone.
That's all I got to say.
And it was out of a sense of anger and so
I'm like, poor babies. I look. I just go get in the car. I'm in the car.
He does.
I'm in the car.
God. So that's another thing. It's transition time, and he in the car. I'm like, you could be in the house helping facilitate, right?
I'm in
the
car.
Like, once somebody can't find a shoe, they forgot. He's just like, I'm in the car, and I'm like,
that's how you got to do it. You got to keep it moving. You got to in the car.
So and any mothers out there know that you oftentimes you have to, it's also coordinating, right? It's coordinating getting everybody out the house, then trying to get yourself ready, and then
you can. Wow,
I know, I can feel it. So anyway,
y'all pray for Pastor.
I basically
y'all pray.
I didn't afterwards. I didn't feel that the way in which I responded was done in love. And so I did. At a moment, I went back to Caitlin and I actually apologized. And I shared with her why I was frustrated, but however, that I want to continue to exercise.
Okay, take a deep breath. Y'all pray mightily, you hear me? Take a deep
While you sitting in the car, you should be.
You just got wound up, though. I felt that.
Okay.
I felt that. Yeah.
But anyway, I was just, the whole purpose of that is sometimes it's about receiving, but then sometimes it's also about, extending and asking for forgiveness and really sharing and being honest and vulnerable when we mess up or when we don't get it right or when we don't hit the mark. And that happens oftentimes. I think we got to think about that when we're at work, when it just
that goes back to extending yourself. The grace, though, like you said, if you don't hit the mark, that's a good way of putting it. There are a lot of times where we don't hit the mark, and I find myself probably apologizing more than she does, but to the girls or to Keisha, and it's okay to give yourself that space. You got to, even if I am in the car, it's all good, because I was ready. I was
in the car, ready. Yeah,
keep it moving.
It's okay.
Yeah. Kenzie came, I think.
Anyway, moving on. We're not going to talk about that. 8.
Laugh often. Laugh often.
Gosh.
Don't take yourself so seriously at times, or the situation so seriously. Laugh. You used to have the saying, keep it light. Because I'm the serious one. I'm, just say keep it light.
Keep it light.
Those are the things that fuel relationships and friendships too. The laughter, the joy, the J factors is so key. Like when I talk about those moments, that when I said think about those relational moments, some of your best relational moments. You felt heard. Other aspects of it is maybe there was laughter and involved in that. It was light. It was just like you just walked away feeling good. Like whether that's from your friends or from your spouse, and laugh. Be able to look back and laugh at things. Because there's some moments that can be the opposite can easily happen. There's so many things. But
I think you talk about those moments, like I literally, and Terrence knows this, like my mom, it would frustrate my mom to no end. But my father and I, we could and it would be so like the most, I don't know, just benign thing. And we would find it hilarious. And we would have these gut wrenching laughs where it would just be a bellow. And I mean, I open my mouth, my head goes back. I mean, to the point where I'm like in tears. Like, and my mom be like, like she would scold me and she would get irritated because she's like, you just. But I mean,
Mama said, "Ain't that funny?"
I mean, I'm for real. And Dad and I, we would like, and sometimes we wouldn't even talk. If we would be out and then we'll see something, and then like we'll both look at it and look at each other and just crack up because we'll know like that right there is hilarious, and it should just be to us. And so, yeah, I mean, laughter is such a critical component of, I believe, healthy relationship. And I like what you just said is joy.
Yeah,
right,
the
J factor, right?
Mm-hmm.
And of course, you know, the same individuals that you laugh with, you will have the moments where you might cry with them too. Yeah. But I definitely think that one of the things in our relationship we have, and even if it's become cute, like things earlier on we would be really sensitive to, and we talk about, but now it's like we tease each other. We talk about it the other day,
and that's what I was about to say. I think laughter brings about a level of vulnerability. But go ahead.
No, I was saying that. So one of the things that Terrence will not put the toilet tissue on the actual toilet roll dispenser. I don't understand. Like, why is it so hard? We could say, oh, you know how like the toilet tissue is running out? He was like, babe, can you bring me a roll of toilet? Sure, bring the roll of toilet tissue. But he'll then use the toilet tissue and then sit it down on the sink. I come into the bathroom and first I used to just it would just be so bad. And I would refuse to put it on. I'm not doing it. It's going to just sit there. So I come back and I tell him and he still won't put it on. And I'm like, so just a couple days ago, it was so I brought him tissue. And then I walk out, and then I just kind of say, and I come back several hours later, and I was like, it's sitting on the counter. And he knew right away. And we just we looked at each other, and we just started cracking up laughing because it was.
I honestly don't do it on purpose. It doesn't bother me. It just doesn't bother. I don't do it on purpose. I mean, if I remember, then I'll do it for her. But in that moment, I'm just trying to use the toilet paper. When I've run out of toilet paper, in that moment, that's all I'm thinking about. I'm trying to finish my business and move on with my day. I'm not trying to turn it over or under, and people fight over that, by the way.
We didn't never fight. I never fought over which way the toilet paper. But just put it on the roll. That's all. Just put it on the roll. Anyway, but so the other day, earlier in our marriage, that right there would have been a whole situation, and our day would have been just detoured for the entire day because I would have been mad, and then get mad, and then you got a little attitude, and then it's just. But I just said that, and we literally it was so I'm on the counter, we can't put it there, and he looked at me, and we just fell out laughing, and so it was just it was a moment. So I think that's just finding those moments to laugh. We're two away, one more, two more to go. 9, have a heart to serve.
Have a heart
to serve. Yeah.
Have a heart to serve. Yeah. We always joke and we share these stories of how, I was the spoiled baby boy of the family. I was the baby of the family, and she was the spoiled. She talked about dad earlier, but she was the spoiled daddy's girl, and the daddy's princess. And I mean, we were used to both in our own different respects, having things done for us, or people, to say, "Oh, Terrence," or especially, "Oh, Princess Keisha." And so we came into this space looking at each other
yes.
It was kind of like, why aren't you serving me? What is wrong with you? And both sort of looking to be served in some ways, you know. And I remember I used to joke when we used to date, Keisha used to have this thing with her coat. And I'm a gentleman. I'm a gentleman. But she's like, her coat, I'm like, what is this? She would take her coat and just put her arms out, like put this coat on me. And I'm like, oh, okay. So we were dating. I'm like, okay, this is different, you know. It's just expected. Serve me. You know, that was the mentality. That was the vibe when we first came into our marriage. But what we learned, you know, honestly, and this real talk. I think that sometimes we want to pull back from serving, but that's really when we rob ourselves of the joy of even your gifts. You know, like I'm the planner of the family, and sometimes I can be that kind of way. Like this birthday anniversary, I was like, look, I don't want to plan nothing. I said, look, I didn't plan everything the rest of the year. And then I had this conversation with my mom sometimes, and she, in it's convicting. She was like, but that's your gift. I'm like, Mom, I didn't ask you for that. But but what Holy Spirit has told me though is that sometimes if you put too much on that, and rather than just leaning into your gifts and your opportunities to serve, if you know, when you do that, you can experience the full joy of it. You know, that's one aspect I think that I was kind of convicted on. You got some Bible on. Let's go.
No, no, I don't.
Yeah,
not on that one.
So not on that one. Okay, well, you know, but definitely, I think it's important that we think about that aspect of serving, you know, one another. And then, you know, I just wanted to share a little bit from Philippians 2, and this is, you know, Paul writing to the church of Philippi. Beginning at verse 1, he says, therefore, if you have any encouragement from being united with Christ, if any comfort from his love, if any common sharing in the Spirit, if any tenderness and compassion, then make my joy complete by being like-minded, having the same love, being one in spirit and one in mind. He says, do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, rather in humility, value others above yourselves.
Wow. Yeah.
Not looking to your own interest, but each of you to the interest of others. Verse 5 says, in your relationships with one another, having the same mindset as Christ Jesus.
That's so good.
So when I think about serving one another, man, Jesus, and when you keep reading this passage, it talks about how Jesus made himself little, didn't think it robbery to make himself a little lower than the angels, basically to serve us, basically to empower us, basically to make us better, basically to lift us up. What I've learned is that there's just great joy in lifting one another up and serving one another, and it serves really a greater purpose when we do that. There's something magical. There's something that just is beyond what we can imagine that gets created in that space. And it goes back to some of the, you know, earlier principles of adding value and coming together for a common cause and something that's so much bigger than just ourselves, you know. And that took some maturity, you know, as the baby boy. I'll just speak for me. You're not gonna say nothing about yourself on that one, huh? That's okay. But I'm talking about me. It took maturity to move beyond just desiring to be served, you know, and it still does. It's still a reminder in some ways. I think about, okay, how are we serving the children? You know, through spending time. How are we serving our parents? That's a good one. You know, as they age and get older, and pushing ourselves, and I'm speaking for me, to be more patient, to be more kind, to be, you know, more loving, and this is a scripture that convicts me.
That's good.
You know, in Philippians 2 around that.
So. And then our last one, because we gotta get ready to wrap it up, is
we got to go celebrate.
Yes, we gotta continue the celebration.
We'll continue.
Identify.
But it's today. It's today.
Identify will continue though, because.
Yeah. Okay.
Identify and protect purpose. Identify and protect purpose.
Identify and protect purpose.
Yeah,
even as we said in the relationship. Even as we said with having a heart to serve, and as I just said, how serving takes on a bigger picture, and that bigger picture is ultimately found in purpose.
Yeah.
Man, what's the purpose of your relationships?
Yeah.
What's the purpose of that friend? That's what going back to that exercise, it really caused me to look at what's the purpose of some of these relationships, and then in different seasons, it's difficult and challenging at times, but it pushes us to have to make adjustments, because if they're not on purpose, then they might not be those healthy relationships
that we need to
continue
to invest in.
If they're not on purpose, and that's something that we have to really wrestle with Holy Spirit when it comes to that space. But and sometimes there's seasons. There were seasons, like particularly in our marriage, for example, where certain relationships had to look different.
Right.
Because they had to align to the purpose of this marriage.
Yes.
And sometimes that hurt it.
Yeah.
That sometimes it could hurt. Sometimes it was something that to be grieved.
Yes.
But it was necessary.
Yeah.
For purpose.
Yeah. That's so good.
Yeah.
That's so good. We again, like I said, we wanted to just come and to have this be conversational and just to share and to reflect on keys. We hope that there was something, and we always end with homework, and so we share with you 10 keys, and we want you to really think about a relationship. I love that exercise about writing down really key relationships that you have and thinking through those relationships. But what I'm thinking and what we would like for you to do is start to think about a particular relationship and identify possibly one of these keys in which you can just intentionally attend to over the next 2 weeks as it relates to that relationship. Is that, intentionally making some plans to invest time? Is that intentionally scheduling some time together and really being conscientious about bringing in laughter and joy? Is that intentionally just really thinking about how you can just add value, thinking about a relationship or someone that you need to call and need to share with them, making the time? Or is it really about you spending some time and sitting with God and reflecting on how you can receive
the love of God,
His love
in that relationship,
right? And so that's what your homework is thinking about these keys and really identifying a few of them that you can begin to really now operationalize and reflect on and attend to. So listen, I'm super excited. Before we go, really quick announcement. I shared it at our last in-person gathering. But we are so excited that on August 14th, Terrence has been asked to share at our home church, Christ Church, in Oak Brook. And so the flyer is on the screen for you to see the details. We would just absolutely be so honored and humbled if our community, if our friends, if our family would come out and be in the congregation to support, to be in prayer, and just to be in fellowship with us. Christ Church is our home church, and this is one of many, and we believe, opportunities that Terrence will have to be able to share at home. So again, that's August 14th. There's a 9 a.m. service and 11 a.m. service. I'm just for consistency and continuity, I'm inviting you all to join us. You could join us at the 9 and come back and be there for the 11, or you could just come and be there with us at the 11 a.m. in the contemporary service in the auditorium. So that's 11 a.m. on August 14th at Christ Church. And then we will be back in the building for our in-person gathering on August Saturday, August 20th.
Yeah.
At 10 a.m. We had a great time in our last, as we always do. The momentum is building, and it's really, really exciting. So we thank you. There are prompts that are on the screen. If you want to get connected to the TLC community, just follow the prompts that are running on the screen. We look forward again to gathering, to sharing. We want you to share. Make sure you share. That's this right. Conversation. I don't think we said that. We didn't say that in the beginning. Oh my God! Share this conversation on the various on your various platforms, whether that's Facebook, on YouTube. We appreciate our YouTubers that are with us today on the YouTube channel. It's been a pleasure. Hopefully we will see you on the 14th. Thank you so much. We're off to continue. That's right. Let's go. Let's get it. The celebration. We love y'all. Bye. Love you. Bye-bye.